At this time when we as women are so much under attack and the earth as a living system is so much under attack, I wonder whether that's to help strengthen that inner core in us, because we're not nearly so fragile as we might imagine. And I think that some of this reckoning is actually maybe to help bring out the best in us.
Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. So welcome, everybody. Today we have with us Nina Simons, and let me tell you a little bit about Nina. She's the co-founder and chief relationship officer at Bioneers, where she leads the Every Woman's Leadership program and has supported nearly 1,000 women leaders across diverse backgrounds. She's also the award-winning author of Nature, Culture, and the Sacred, and the co-editor of Moonrise, whose work continues to inspire circles, classrooms, and movements for earth-centered, heart-led leadership. Welcome back, Nina.
Thank you so much, Maureen. It's good to be with you again.
Yes, I was just saying to somebody earlier today that I am just so fortunate to have had several conversations with you. Today being, I think, the third or the fourth. I know you were so graciously accepting to be one of my interviews in the book, The Enchanted Earth, and you shared some beautiful stories in that interview. And then when I started the podcast, you said, sure, I'll be on. And you yet again shared some more beautiful stories. And I'm really excited to what will show up today.
As am I. And, I'm endlessly devoted and fascinated by the Enchanted Earth. So what a treat to be with you again.
You do such beautiful work with women and leadership in this world that is desperately needing that. I'm going to start with 2 quotes from your book.
Oh, all right.
So right here in the very beginning of the book, you say, all the brilliant, innovative, and effective solutions and strategies won't be enough to shift our collective course without an accompanying and radical change of heart. Would you like to comment on that beautiful statement that I think is even more appropriate now than when you published this book?
Yeah. It certainly feels more appropriate now. I think all of my adult life, Maureen, I have been guided towards a whole human response to everything that we encounter, and to recognizing that nature's brilliance is beyond our imagining. It's more complex and more mysterious and more ancient than anything our sciences, have yet to catch up on. And so, in a nutshell, what I would summarize is to say that, as I've explored what I'm most passionate about in this life, which feels to me like what my soul brought me here to become, my devotion to the natural world is really high on the list. And it's not a devotion in a disembodied sense. It's a devotion that feels that I experience very strongly in my own body. And it's a love that's very real to me. I used to think that if I told anyone publicly how much I love the earth, they'd think I was crazy. But I've outgrown that notion. And so, and now I feel like maybe if I shout it from the rooftops, other women will have the strength to acknowledge how much they love our mother life. Um, so that was part of what drew me into my life path. And then I had a very powerful experience in the mid 90s where I was acknowledged for my leadership in a magazine then called The Etny Reader. And it was profiles of young leaders under 40 that they thought were up and coming. And I knew that I should feel honored, but actually I felt really conflicted. I didn't being publicly acknowledged as a leader because it didn't fit my idea of who I was. And I began to explore that. And I realized also that it felt to me like it painted a target on my back and like me and my stand much more visible than I was comfortable with. And as I explored, I realized that I and many, many, many women have inherited a model, a mental model of leadership, and men have too, actually, that's not serving us so well. You know, if we look at the leaders we have in place now, many of them are deeply informed by patriarchal bias and by a kind of dominator model of leadership that's solitary and that's overextended and self sacrificial and uh, tends to burn out. And, you know, if you look across the nonprofit world, you'll see examples of leaders burning out all the time. And the average tenure for an executive director is like 2 years. So, you know, our society is rife with examples of how leadership, as we've inherited the mental model, isn't serving us. And so the first book that I wrote was actually a compilation of talks from amazing leaders, both women and men, whose leadership really inspired me in ways that totally broke out of the mold of that mental model. And so I explored that because I'm a pattern seeker. And I found myself noticing that there were all kinds of patterns that they fell into, that instead of being given a title and authority because of an inheritance or a graduate degree or something else externally conferred, they were all people who were leading change because they felt inwardly motivated to defend or protect something they love and really wanted to transform in this world. So that was sort of the first pattern. And then I noticed that many or all of them were sharing leadership and not just being isolated, you know, solitary leaders, but in fact, were working in a kind of relational way that shared the burden of leadership and also recognized that we all have different gifts and talents and that none of us have all of them all wrapped up in one neat package. And it's so much better to lead in tandem or, you know, with support from others. So the first book that I wrote was called Moonrise: The Power of Women Leading from the Heart. And then over time, I kept convening women across every difference you can imagine, practically every difference you can imagine. Not not so much political difference, but across age and class and discipline and orientation. And we would gather 20 women at a time for a week long immersion into cultivating women's leadership. And I learned a lot from that over the years. And what I found was almost all of the women, even though we had selected them for their already leadership, they came saying, "Oh, I don't consider myself a leader." And so, you know, it became clear to me that, oh, we have work to do in terms of reclaiming that title and redefining it and reframing it, and also giving people an embodied experience of what it's like to feel really supported in your leadership by others around you. And so that was magical and a lot of learning. And over the years, I wrote about it, I spoke about it at Bioneers, and I gathered all that learning into this most recent book, which is Nature, Culture, and the Sacred. And it's a beautiful piece of work that I'm really proud to have done. So that's the quick summary. But it
Yeah.
didn't even explain Bioneers at all.
Yeah, and it's just amazing because our path unfolds
Mm,
as it should
mm,
over time, right? When you
mm,
were back walking on the farm with your husband Kenny, and
mhm.
you were given that message to work for the land, that you needed to work for Mother Earth, which you beautifully share in my book, The Enchanted Earth. Way back then, you had no idea where this was going to lead you.
No, I certainly didn't. And, it's interesting, Maureen, because my commitment to Mother Life, as I call her, um, and my commitment to women and women's leadership feel very closely tied together, because I don't think it's an accident that as women, we respond to the cycles of the moon. And, back when I had my moon time, I noticed that if I was really in balance, I would typically get my period on or around the full moon. And that when I was in a group of women together, many women's periods would sync up, and there is a deep natural affinity, I think, to being committed to the fertility and the abundance and the co-creativity of the earth and ourselves and each other. I think our
Wow.
patriarchal
Yeah.
culture has falsely segregated us.
Yeah.
And I think there's
That
tremendous power in realizing how powerfully and quickly we can grow each other.
that is so interesting, Nina, because yeah, I think so many of us women have heard or have experienced that our kind of close, intimate circle that we either work with or live with, we're kind of on the same cycles. But
Mhm.
I never really considered the energetic power of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
And and when you said that and when you said that we're in, you noticed you were more in balance when you received it during the full moon. Yeah, I'm not sure I ever got but maybe if I still had my moon time now, I think I would.
well, I'm going to say that in many indigenous cultures, um, the women were excluded from sweat lodges if they were on their moon time. And it wasn't because there was something dirty about it. It was because it was believed that they had a more powerful connection with the divine at that time, and that the energetic connection that they had would overpower the energy of the sweat lodge. And that was why they were kept separate.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. I know even now in modern times, I've been to sweat lodges and was told that you could not enter if it was your time of the month.
Mhm.
But it was men running the sweat lodges,
Mm.
and they didn't explain,
Yeah.
and perhaps they didn't even know
Right.
the deeper understanding of what you just said, what you just shared. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. No, it's so
Mm.
interesting because if we look at some of the eldest intact indigenous cultures on Turtle Island, I think of the Haudenosaunee, who are also known as the Iroquois Six Nations in the Northeast. and the Okanagan in the Northwest, each of them have really powerful traditions of how the women are involved in the governance of their nations, and in the Haudenosaunee, the women actually select the leader. And they have the authority, the women of the Longhouse, they have the authority to rescind his leadership if he's not doing a good job. So there's a wonderful story called Sisters in Spirit about how the women voting rights movement in this country grew out of the women founders experiencing the Haudenosaunee women model and experiencing how the wisdom of women was valued in that culture and still is.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
It's always learning something new with you.
Oh, thanks. I think it's part of my purpose.
It is. You're another archetype besides leader is teacher, mentor, and so many others. There was something else in the book that really spoke to me because I think, especially in these times, we really need to remember our purpose and what we're here to do. And it really is a big part of your work as well as mine. I care that it motivates me and that it's a way to help me identify my deepest passion. As I see it, the work of this time is for each of us to find what we're most exactly called to do and then invest ourselves fully there.
Mm.
And those words really call to me so strongly because our passion is what creates our joy in life.
Mm.
And I feel, and I'm sure you'd agree, it's whatever we're here to do is what is needed here.
Mhm.
And if we don't do what we came here to do,
Yeah.
the earth is losing out on that in some way. The human community is losing out. And I think part of so much of the challenges we have in our modern life is the fact that people are just not connected with what lights them up and what gives them joy and what their passion is, and maybe not even knowing. I mean, I've talked to so many people who don't even know what their passion is.
Yeah. I read an interesting piece recently that suggested that what we are experiencing is actually a crisis of intimacy. And it really resonated for me, Maureen, because I believe that not only through the polarization that we're experiencing in this country politically, but also as a result of COVID and the internet and the rise of tech and AI, that we have a sense of false isolation that's incredibly damaging. Um, and and it's interesting in relation to what you say, because what I've been noticing is that the crisis of intimacy is not only between people, but also between people and the more than human world, but also between people and our inner lives. Right? Because again, this culture that we've inherited, that we were born into and raised up with, has such a tremendously patriarchally informed bias that we tend to focus externally much more than we do internally. And it's, as you say, it's like it takes intention and practice to develop the skills to really witness ourselves. And, one of the wisest things a mentor ever said to me back when I was really impatient about discovering my purpose. And I was like, why can't I know it now? And she said, pay exquisite attention to what makes your flame grow brighter. And you have to pay exquisite attention because sometimes it comes and goes like that. You know, it's just, and it can be located anywhere in your body. Different people have it different places. Um, and and that flash of light, that spark,
Mm.
is such a good clue to what you're here to serve and what you're most devoted to. Yeah.
There's also that intimacy with ourselves is also recognizing our authentic nature. I mean, like our authenticity
Right.
is such a huge part of this. Who are we authentically without all the cultural norms stuffed down and family uh what our family wants us to do and our spouse and our children and our boss and all of that
Yeah.
really. And then of course social media, like you said, that is
Yeah.
such a huge impact on our modern lives.
Yeah.
But who are we? What lights us up? Who are we authentically? And I saw that there was some research. I'm not sure. I am a research geek, and I want to see like the details of the research and to confirm it. But there was some research that's been touted on social media about the fact that love and joy are not the highest vibrations. It's authenticity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I heard that, I got, well, I'm getting them now again, chills.
Hmm.
So I think intuitively, I believe it, that that is so true. It resonates with me very deeply. But of course, my mind wants to know, okay, let me look at the research and confirm that this was done properly. But yeah, our authentic nature.
It's interesting. I've been also doing some research and some scouting for media that helps support us through this time that is so fraught with so much pain and loss and hardship. And because we are products of a culture that has a tendency to be rather emotionally illiterate and not so good at expressing emotion or even acknowledging it, um, I've been looking at that, and one thing that I found last night, actually, a wonderful film that's on the Hulu platform that tells the story of the Lilith Fair. And it was a festival that happened for 3 years in the late 90s, that was featuring all women artists and musicians. And Sarah McLaughlin was the one who created it. And she tells the story so beautifully, Maureen, about how she grew up with a very difficult mother. And her mother basically told her all through her childhood, don't dream, don't imagine, you won't be able to do that. And so she was belittled always by her mother. And at one point she says, I guess it really helped me in that I grew up feeling I had to prove her wrong. And right. And so she did sort of blossom into this authenticity, as you describe it, of her actual true self. And she's quite a remarkable figure. Um, so that's one thing. But the other thing that's interesting to me is that one of my benchmarks for myself has always been integrity and congruence. And I just recently heard a great podcast called The Emerald, and it's an episode on powers great and small, and it's fantastic. And it talks about how one of the ancient Hindu goddesses actually had to have integrity. And for me, it was like I just knew that as I discovered different parts of myself, they all needed some form of expression. And so my congruence measure was, can I show up as the same person all the time, no matter who I'm talking to? Right? That was one measure of congruence,
Yeah.
right? Because we all grow up learning how to put on masks and different personas in order to fit somebody else's idea. And so that was one measure of it. And another was like, how do I integrate as much of what I understand to be authentic to myself into how I walk my path so that I can embody what I'm hoping to pass along? Because I've just so much about how presence affects everything. And I believe there is so much about the invisible world and our prayers and our rituals and our connection to ancestors that actually influences what happens in the outer world.
Yes. Yes. So well said.
Mm.
Wow. Sometimes I feel, I think we all do, like what's going on in this world right now. But there is, if we look at it from a maybe more of a collective spiritual initiation, I think we're going through that together, and many of us have had several spiritual initiations throughout our life or awakenings to deeper layers of who we are and our shadow. And to witness this on a collective level is quite startling, but also we were made for this time.
Mhm. Mhm.
The women were made for this time.
Yeah.
And people like you are helping women to uncover that leadership ability within them.
Well, I mean, it's certainly my aspiration. Thank you. And, I feel like what happened for me, Maureen, was that I realized how much my cultural conditioning had limited my ideas of what was possible for me. And,
Mhm.
I felt like I had to go through a deep process of, we developed a ritual we called cultivating and composting. And
Oh.
we would sit in a circle, and each woman would say what she was cultivating in herself and what she was composting, giving back to the earth. And, the beautiful thing about doing that in a circle is you find that you have so much resonance with what other women are saying that you realize, oh, I'm not alone in this. Because so many of us have that conditioning that keeps us smaller and less authentic and less creative than we're meant to be. And I think that just like Mother Earth, I think we as women, and of course it's not only women, I think we all have masculine and feminine within us.
Mhm.
And we're all products of Mother Earth, actually. Right? She really is our mother. Um, and she is endlessly creative and innovative and, going through cycles of death and rebirth and dark nights of the soul, as you so aptly referred to, and I think this time that we're in that's both tremendously painful and scary, but also on another level exciting, is a reckoning, and it's a reckoning that's a long time coming for a
Yeah.
country that has behaved in pretty hideous ways over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And we get to help the
So,
demers.
yes, yes. So, I can you tell me a little bit about this program that Bioneers is running and you're part of called Sacred Activism,
Mm,
meeting our challenges as gateways for embodying interaction?
sure. Well, this project really grew up out of an awareness that our culture has tended to really segregate our connection to what we consider sacred on the one hand and our activism on the other. And if you look at, some of the history of activist movements, again, they tend to be very aggressive and hard hitting and mental and sort of loud and and then if you right and then if you look at how native people do activism, not all native people but some, um, there's a quality of prayer and of intention setting and of the sacred that they engage with very profoundly before entering into any kind of confrontation or action to address change.
Oh,
And, you know, um, it relates to what you were bringing up about purpose, right? If each of us has a sacred purpose, a soul purpose, if you will, like a soul mission of, I think of it as why my soul brought me here on earth at this time. If each of us has one of those, and if that is connected to the change making we want to do in the world, how much more powerful is it? Can it be? Right. And it
mm.
also relates to what I was saying earlier about, you mentioned earlier my commitment to leading from the heart. And, we're living through a product of a mentally constructed reality. It's not heart led for the most part. Although there are a lot of movements happening at the grassroots level and underneath the soil in a mycelial way that are very much heart led and spirit led. So for me, I've never been somebody who wanted to shut down a bridge or, chain myself to a fence or, stand up to violence in that direct way. But I think that there are as many forms of activism in this world as we are people. And I think that we're all discovering that if we bring to bear our devotion, our love for what really motivates us with our sense of connection to something much, much bigger, whether it's the enchanted earth or however each of us understands what's sacred, if we can integrate that with what we choose to do and how we choose to show up, it's going to have a whole different quality of presence, of power, of intention, and of capacity. And frankly, I think we need all the help we can get right now. So that's kind of what's behind it. And I'm teaming up with just a wonderful, wonderful teacher who's an amazing teacher for me to offer that course. Her name is Deborah Eden Tull, and she is a mindfulness practitioner, a Zen practitioner, and also um, an animist. She just has brilliant observations about, she studied mindfulness for a long time. And when she came out of 7 years of living at a Zen monastery, she said, oh, these are really great tools, but they're so mental. Where's the heart in them? And so she
Ah,
wrote a book and developed a whole practice around what she calls relational mindfulness. And it's really about addressing that crisis of intimacy that I spoke of earlier. So she's a magical teacher, and I'm so honored to be partnered with her.
Wow, it sounds like a beautiful
Mm.
training, a beautiful program to bring to people in today's world. And like you said, I mean, we've been taught that you have to fight might with might, and it is that more masculine, patriarchal domination, aggression, loudness that we think we need. But when you look back at, like, say, martial arts, and it's that presence that we need to build within us that knows just when to act, when to really get centered and mindful. I love how you mentioned, like, really bringing into a mindful space our intentions and our heart,
Yeah.
because that we're taught to dismiss that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I wonder about, Maureen, is I've worked with people from a lot of different backgrounds, and uh, particularly with a lot of Indigenous women. And I've seen not only the difficulty and the trauma that has come through hundreds of years of genocidal tactics, but I've also seen a quality of inner strength that seems to emerge through that. And I wonder whether,
Yes,
there's a lot of
I love
beautiful
that.
work about how people come together in times of crisis, that the big picture can be daunting and frightening and disempowering. And certainly it's intended to do that, which is part of what helps me slough it off. But on the personal level, we know people who need defending. We know places that need defending. I'm getting much more involved in my local community in order to develop a community plan for how we want our region to be in the years ahead. Because if we don't do anything, it's getting developed in ways that are really damaging,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. That one of the astrologers that I listen to on his podcast, Rick Levine, he says, think globally, act locally.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah.
Wow. Well, as we come to our end, is there anything else that you would like to share with this group?
Um, Only to say that if you love the Enchanted Earth, you should check out Bioneers, because I am fortunate enough to share the leadership of this extraordinary organization that is a veritable fountain of inspiring, uplifting, science-based, really beautiful work. And it's both science-based and heart-based, which I love because, again, it's a whole system. And so if you like podcasts, check out the podcast, newsletters, all kinds of goodies, or come to the conference, which is an amazing experience. I'm very proud and honored to serve it, honestly. And we just promoted our new executive director, who's an extraordinary Indigenous woman artist. And I'm so thrilled about her choosing to accept the gig. It's really quite an honor.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And one of these days I will make it to the conference.
I hope so. You'll be glad when you do.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am sure. I am sure. Now, the sacred activism, you also have another workshop on the Tao Te Ching coming up, talking about the
Yes.
yin and the
Yes.
feminine. And
Yes,
that is coming up very soon, I believe.
it is. And I'm going to be taking that one because it's a body of work that I just adore. And once you hear how the Tao Te Ching presents the yin and the yang, it's it sort of takes it all out of the gender binary and really presents a vision and a framework for holism and a way to practice getting through this time. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I have a background in feng shui, so I
Um,
really love the poetic language
yeah.
that feng shui gives us to help understand energy and how things move. And we're in a very young time, and the
Yes.
yin is expected to just come right back in, but
Yeah.
we need to help her. We need to really ease the transition here because it's a little chaotic, but it's meant to be.
Well, in the first place,
Any change.
right? And the first place to begin is within ourselves,
Absolutely.
because we all have embodied all these habits and patterns from the very young culture, exactly as you say. Yeah.
Yeah. And then sacred activism starts in November, I believe.
It does. Goes from mid-November to mid-December with time off for Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
wonderful. All those links will be in the show notes below, so everyone look for them. Nina, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today yet again. Again, I'm just so grateful to have these conversations with you.
Well, the feeling is totally mutual, Maureen. It's lovely to be with you and your listeners. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And to all the listeners out there, please like, share, and comment. I would love to hear what this conversation brought up within you, and I will respond to those comments. So thank you, everybody. Have a magical day. Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.